This is the Nasserman Hockey Podcast with James Nichols and John Zeller.
All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Nasserman Hockey Podcast. James Nichols and John Zeller here as always. In Islander country, we know you're freaking out. We know you want answers. We know you're waiting for news. And let me tell you, I have all of that. I'm just choosing to withdraw it from you for my pure entertainment of the thousands of tweets I get per minute these days, asking me what I know. I'm doing it on purpose, just so you guys know. I'm not telling you I know all the answers, but not even John knows these days, right, bud?
I know nothing. I know absolutely nothing. I've been refreshing. Actually, I don't refresh Twitter. TweetDeck is my friend.
And you turned my alerts on, right?
No, I turned your alerts off a long time ago. I don't get any of your text message alerts or anything. Everything's muted. When I want to read what you say, I look for it.
Of course, I'm just kidding. I only know anything that I've put out there on Twitter already. But before we talk about the New York Islanders, let's get to On the Island, brought to you by DraftKings. And the games are underway, and DraftKings is bringing you to the podium. DraftKings free-to-play pools are available every day of the games in Tokyo and offering a free shot at up to $50,000 in total cash prizes. That's up to $50,000 up for grabs, and the best part is that it's free to play. DraftKings free-to-play pools are easy to enter. Just download the DraftKings app, go to pools, and choose from a wide variety of free contests for an opportunity to win cash prizes. All you have to do is answer a handful of questions and what you think is going to happen during that day's events, and track your results throughout the evening to see if you will achieve victory. Download the top-rated DraftKings app now and use promo code THPN when you sign up to get your free shot at up to $50,000 in total cash prizes every day of the games in Tokyo. Head to DraftKings Pools page to get your shot at huge cash prizes. That's promo code THPN for a limited time only at DraftKings. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for full details. So, we were talking about UFAs. We were talking about there's no news. And, there's no news, but sometimes no news, or most times when it comes to Lou Lamoriello, no news means good news, right, John? There's a history of that with him. Most times everyone freaks out, but in the end, it usually works itself out, does it not?
For the most part. There was a story. So Elliot Friedman was on No Sleep Till Belmont with Arthur Staples this week, and while I didn't absolutely love the episode because there wasn't a whole lot for them to talk about either, and this was a few days ago, I presumably Monday if it was released yesterday, there was a story that Elliot told about Lamoriello when he was with the Devils and making that trade for Corey Schneider, and he had mentioned that Lou said to Vancouver, if anything gets out, even if I'm on my way up to the podium, we will cancel the trade. Like we will change this. So I assume that the players know, and these are players in Palmieri, Cizikas, and Parise that know Lou at this point. So and the agents know Lou. This is not a player, maybe some young player from another team or something like that, where they have not built this relationship with Lou Lamoriello. They know they have to keep everything quiet. There's probably contingency plans on signing this guy for $500,000 more, and this, he's got a lot to figure out. So keeping it quiet on all fronts, even probably between players, make sure that he can get everything he needs to get done, completed in the time that he has, without losing out on UFAs, which is everyone's concern right now. So I think it's very strategic. And what we saw today, and we'll get to it around the rink later on, was some overpayments on some UFAs from, so I think not falling in love with a player and, getting an Andrew Ladd deal or just signing a player too long where up front it's really good. And people forget Ladd was pretty good. I think he scored 23 goals his first season. Did he not? That deal up front, you're like, oh, okay, that's going to work. You don't think 2020, 21, whatever, 19, 20, 21, where it's going to be ridiculous. We can see a little bit more of that now with advanced analytics and decline and all of that.
Right.
For better or for worse, it makes every trade and move get put on this giant microscope and tough to enjoy anything anymore.
Right.
But, it's you know what I'm trying to say. So it's we have to wait is what we're saying. We know what these moves are. It's good that he's not making these huge splashes up front and either over trading or overpaying for a player.
Mm-hmm.
So being quiet's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad, and like you said, Lou does tell people before things get out that if it gets out, I'll ex-nay it. It's gonna it's canceled or whatever. I don't think that's going to be the case here. I know I did tweet out this morning confirming one report that Parise was signed and it's all done. I was told the same thing. I do have a source. Same thing for Kyle Palmieri and Bobby Margaritas. Bob McKenzie, said that today the Islanders and Casey Cizikas were hard at work hammering out a new deal, which again, we haven't heard from anything or anywhere else that anybody was interested in Casey Cizikas. So the silence is pretty deafening regarding these players. Yes, someone like me did tweet out that these things are done, but the fact that you haven't heard it from anywhere else regarding maybe another team, other teams interested, pretty much means these things are signed, sealed, and in the drawer. They might just be working out little details here and there. But Andy Green was signed a couple weeks ago, and that's not even official. Like the team hasn't announced it or anything. So these are things that you have to understand. The terms and the conditions do get released sometimes, but the official announcements don't come till later. I really I wouldn't worry about it right now. Because I get it. All these names are flying off the board via free agency, and these, it looks like other teams are upgrading, taking all these players off the board, but there's still plenty of options, and plenty of time left in the summer to figure these things out.
And remember too, who was it last summer that we knew that they were signed and they were even maybe skating?
Matt Martin.
Was it Matt Martin? I thought it was maybe Andy Green, or maybe it was both of them. I can't remember.
Yeah,
but there was
Matt Martin.
And so he was like skating with a team. There was we didn't know if there was a deal. We didn't know anything.
Right.
Barzell was similar. Like,
yeah,
he was in and around. Like, was he going to be there? He missed a few days of camp. They were trying to figure things. Like, things can change between now and the beginning of the season, from signings to trades and different things. We'll get into that, but let's talk about what we do know.
Yeah, so like I said, Parise, Palmieri, we're going to consider that done. From what I'm told, Cizikas as well. That's done. So the lineup now, it looks full, right? You got Palmieri, who's likely to. Let's talk about the lineup. You have Palmieri, who's likely to play the top line. You have Parise, who's likely to play left wing 3. And your fourth line is essentially staying the same with Cizikas and, a healthy Lee back. Now that top line of Lee, Barzell, Palmieri seems pretty good to me. I don't know if you can say that Palmieri is an upgrade to Jordan Eberle, but it'll be interesting to see what it's like with Palmieri in the same lineup as Lee, because we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, that I think is the big caveat to this is Lee is, they always say own rentals. When you have an impending UFA and you're at the end of the season, you don't trade them at the deadline, and you know that they're not going to re-sign. It's it's an internal rental. I don't know what you call this with Lee, but he's coming back into the lineup, and that's going to be a huge upgrade.
Yeah,
for the Islanders. I mean, obviously over Komarov, right? That almost goes without saying. So yeah, having that top line, it'll be interesting for them to kind of work that out. I do like Parise on that third line. If Komarov's still around and something happens with Parise, or he's having a bad streak, it's not like Komarov can't go in and he's bad in that L3 spot, left wing 3 spot.
Mm-hmm.
I think occasionally he's okay there. As a 13th forward, Komarov's fine. If Parise is playing almost every single night, that's fine with me.
It might not even get to Komarov. I think that Richard Panik, who came over in that Detroit deal, it might be better suited for that 13th forward role, because he can, play well defensively, but I think he's got a little bit more of an upside offensively than Leo Komarov. So
It's possible, and it's also possible, and I think we'll get to that a little bit later with the trade routes, but as it stands right now with who is signed, at least the forward group, it looks like it'll be okay. Lee is such a huge upgrade to have back. I think I almost forget what it's like for Barzal to be playing in this lineup with him and how well they play together.
Yeah, and here's the other thing too, right? Lee's going to come back for a full season, and there's a distinct possibility that Oliver Wahlstrom takes a pretty good step forward this summer, establishing himself as an everyday forward in the lineup. And I wouldn't be surprised if he actually wins maybe top line minutes, and you have a third line of, instead of Wahlstrom down there, you have Palmieri down there. And that's a pretty good third line too. Parise, Peugeot, and Palmieri.
Yeah, and I almost want to wait to talk about that scenario where you're moving guys throughout the lineup, because I think the trades have more to do with that.
Sure, yeah,
you know what I mean. Like I think with it, there's possibilities, and we both I think have the same thought on that.
Okay, so let's talk about other possible additions that are available on the UFA market right now. Somebody asked us this morning, John, if there's a free agent out there who you could, pluck right now, who would you choose? I think who you chose was signed already. Am I correct? I can't remember who it was, but who did you pick?
Mike Hoffman, and he did sign.
Correct. Yes.
3 years, $13.5 million total contract, $4.5 million AAV.
Yeah,
I think that would have been a little rich for the Islanders. I don't know that I would have hated it. I don't think a UFA signing at this point is the way that the Islanders can even go. Again, we'll talk about having to move around the rock. Like it doesn't. If Parise and Palmieri are in the lineup, if they're penned in, not penciled, if they're penned into the lineup, something else needs to happen to make all of this work. And there's a need on the back end as well. And like I said, an unfortunate conclusion, I think, as I put it earlier today on Twitter, but yes, Mike Hoffman was my pick. I thought he could return to form, 25 goals, 30 goals with Barzal easy, and then power play. Parise and Hoffman on a power play would have been great, or even just on two different power plays. Those are huge upgrades. So we'll see what he does in Montreal, but that was my pick.
My pick was Brendan Saad, and he actually is still available. With Gabriel Landeskog going back to Colorado, which we will talk about. He might be the odd man out. So I think that he has a good two-way game, fits the Islander style very well, and he could go anywhere between the first, second, and third line on the Islanders. If they really wanted to plug him in on the first line, it would work. Second line, it would work. Third line, it would work. So, and he could play both wings, so he's pretty versatile. He can do, pretty much anything in all three zones. I don't know if he would score 30 goals again. I know he has one season like that.
Well, you almost have to take 5 to 8 goals or maybe 10 to 15 points off of anyone that comes onto the team, just because of the way the team plays. Like I wouldn't expect if you get a 30 goal scorer. I mean, they're still capable of doing it. Who knows if they're that much of an addition on the power play or something like that? It's possible. A whole bunch of the forward group. It's not. I mean, who scored the most goals in I guess as close to a full season as you can get under Trotz in the last few years? Was it Brock Nelson at like 25?
Might have been. No, I think he got closer to 30.
I mean, even still, that seems high, but I can believe that. He's not even. I don't know what he would do on other teams. Maybe he gets 30, 35. So maybe you're taking 6-8 goals off guys when they come onto the island. Into the Trotz lineup, in other words. So we'll see. I'm not expecting. They just need to win. They just need it would help them. This is a really dumb way to put it. It would just help them, not like the games that are really close where they're losing 2-1. They can at least either push it to overtime or shootout, or actually be able to come back and win the game. Like they're 1 to 2 goals a game, or maybe a goal and a half a game between them and winning a lot more games. Like look at what you saw in Game 7.
Yeah.
You're 2 goals away from winning Game 7 and going to the cup.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're not looking for that huge of a punch. You don't need them to do what they did previously. You just need them to do something.
You were right, by the way. Brock Nelson's most goals scored in a season, 26 in the 2019-20 season. He also did it in 2015-16.
He's a goal scorer.
But that was in 68 games, so that's a 30-goal pace. So he was going to do it, just didn't get the opportunity because the COVID-19 pandemic cut everything off. So,
and I think it would help just adding any kind of injection and we're preaching to the choir if you're listening to this, and obviously you, Jay, an injection of scoring into this lineup would obviously help. It's guys that are a little inconsistent. The Beauvilliers, Brock Nelson, Lee, they're not they're scoring not even every third game or every fourth game. It's in bunches or a bunch of games in a row, and then it's quiet. So you need players to be able to find their rhythm. So getting a guy that's used to scoring goals, that's good at scoring goals, helps kind of fill in those gaps a little bit so that those losing streaks clear up quicker. That's really what the problem is, that the Islanders just get on these streaks and everybody's just playing bad. And they get out of it because one guy's starting to, heat up a little bit. The goalie heats up, a defender and a forward. Like you get a few guys just kind of pulling their weight, and it turns things around. You need to be able to stop the bleeding a lot quicker,
right?
And it starts with just plainly and obviously just scoring goals,
right? Yeah. So again, Saad would have been my choice to for someone to come in to pluck out of free agency with Gabriel Landeskog gone. But let's talk about who's off the board, just because, the Islanders have holes to fill. They traded away Nick Leddy. They traded away Andrew Ladd. I mean, that's not a hole, but they cleared up the cap space. They let Jordan Eberle go in the Seattle expansion draft. So there's a lot of holes in this team right now, presumably filled by Parise, Palmieri, Cizikas. But there's still a hole on defense to fill, and that might be the most concerning one. But to start this conversation, Gabriel Landeskog goes back to the Colorado Avalanche for 8 years. To me, that doesn't surprise me. No. I had a feeling that, this was only dragging on because his agent was trying to get the most out of the Avalanche as he could, squeezing the money out of them, squeezing the term out of them. There was one point where there was a report that, they were only offering him a 3-year deal. They only tabled him a 3-year deal at like $6.5 million. And you just knew that wasn't going to cut it for him. And if that was the offer, I could have seen him go into free agency. But you knew it was just a game of chicken. You knew that the agent and the administration were waiting it out, trying to sweat each other out, and eventually Landeskog got what he wanted. He got the 8 years, and he was never leaving Colorado. I mean, he's the heart and soul of that team.
I mean, he's definitely a huge part. I believe he's the captain. There are definitely other teams he could have went to and maybe taken a little bit of a haircut and on salary, that is, and won a cup in the next few years. But if he knows that roster is close, he knows where the Colorado Avalanche are, and he knows how much better they are with him in the lineup. Sure, I mean, the Islanders made it to the Final Four. You know what you're getting into, but it's a different system. You're going to play different under Trotz. That's a known thing. But playing under management and coaches in Colorado, that. You know what is expected of you. There's so I think that's a better move for him. Yeah, honestly, I think just staying there and knowing what you're getting yourself into, to uproot your family, the whole 9 yards, the whole thing makes a lot more sense that way.
Yeah, totally. And that's an Avalanche team who also lost Philip Grubauer to the Seattle Kraken. They signed him in unrestricted free agency, but they bring in Darcy Kemper, not too shabby of a replacement. So Colorado's going to be just as good as they were.
The Seattle thing was interesting. I know we're kind of getting it to around the NHL, but they have Vanacek, They bring him in, and then they trade
drafted
him
him,
back.
and
They
they traded
draft
him
him in the expansion, and they trade him back to Washington. If you're Vanacek, you're like, wow.
At least Washington really wants me, huh?
Well, no, it was interesting because Francis, there was a quote floating around like, "Oh, we didn't think Grubauer was going to be available," and it's really funny because it's like, "Oh, well, we picked Vanacek, and then we like saw this other guy was available, so yeah, we don't need you anymore."
Sorry, guy.
Yeah, like you were a good like consolation prize, but
Yeah,
we don't need you, so see ya.
yeah.
I thought that was really, he's not making any friends. Ron Francis is not making any friends around the league with players. I'm sure that's not something that you want to see. I know it's a tough situation, but yeah.
So the most concerning thing right now for the Islanders is probably the blue line, right? We have an idea of who's going to fill out the forward group, but the blue line right now is looking very thin. Pelech is going to come back; it's not an issue. We have Pulock, as his other half of the tandem. Then it's Blank and Scott Mayfield, and then it's Green and Noah Dobson. Who's going to fill in for the Nick Leddy void? Some had said that there was a possibility Alex Goligoski was going to be a potential segue for Nick Leddy and fill in for that second line or second pairing defensive spot. He goes to Minnesota on a 1-year, $5 million deal. Alec Martinez goes back to Vegas on a 3-year deal, I believe. I don't remember the AAV off the top of my head. Do you know that?
I don't. It
was a good deal. It was like I believe it was in the $5 million range. Actually, we have the free agent tracker up.
3 years, cap hit of 5.25 every year.
3-year, 5.25. So good deal for Vegas to keep Alex Martinez around. And the big defenseman that everybody was hoping would come to the Islanders was Ryan Suter, who winds up in Dallas on a 4-year deal going into his age 37 season at $3.6 million AAV. What did you make of that deal? Would you have done that if you were the general manager of the Islanders at age 37, a 4-year deal?
For Sutter? I don't know the difference. I don't know. And it's interesting that he was. I mean, it's the team also offered it, or they started the Suter camp started there, and the team agreed. So you can't, some teams are crazy, and that's like that, crazy UFA time. What is now July 28th as we're recording this, but July 1st for all intents and purposes. GMs get a little crazy. They just want to lock up players, and it's interesting that that's what was even required to get him, because he's making a ton of money on the buyout. I'm not saying he needs to take league min,
right?
But at least if go somewhere and win at that point. If you know that, you can make teams want you and you can make a difference. Like you pretty much have your pick of the litter. It has everything to do with how much you're getting paid and how long you would like to get paid. $1.5 million. $1.5 million for 3 years, sure. That doesn't hurt. That's not going to hurt most teams. It's the problem is when it's that much money for that much term. He just signed himself up for a mini disaster in 2 seasons.
Yeah, I'm not really sure, at all what's going on with Dallas, because they're on the, brink of a possible rebuild from the way I see it, right? They made the Cup final in the COVID year. Last season, they dropped off, didn't even make the playoffs. Plagued by injuries, I guess, but Radulov is older. Jamie Benn's getting older. He's not the same anymore. Tyler Seguin had, I think he missed the entire season with injury. But a lot of old guys on that team. Now, albeit they have Miro Heiskanen and John Klingberg, 2 of the better defensemen in the league. But, they're not really trending in the direction where they're in a buy now win or a win now window to me. So if I was Ryan Suter and I was looking on paper at, who was going to be, I don't know, the most successful in the amount of time I have left playing, the Islanders to me would have been the obvious choice. But
and how much of a difference he can make? Like if you're a player, you're looking, okay, what kind of difference? Like am I going to make, I mean, every player wants to believe they're going to be the difference maker, right? So maybe this isn't so true, but like, realistically, can I show up on this roster and really make a difference? Like, is that going to help us get over the hump? What else
Right.
have they added? What do I add to the roster? All of that. I agree. I don't know that place is Dallas. I may not know the team well enough, but based on, and they had a really rough bubble year, or this last season, the shortened season, the COVID stuff, then the power issues in Texas definitely put them in a tough spot. But the way that they fell was quite hard from making it to the final the year before.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
So I don't like is now, and and then they brought in Holtby. So now they have they have 3 or 4 goalies, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember who the fourth person is, but
Khudobin, Bishop, Ottinger, and now Holtby.
So I don't know what that means. It may mean that they can move Khudobin, who's been excellent.
I think it's going to be Bishop.
Or Bishop, and get assets and then continue to build. Like, if that's what they sold Suter on, then all right, maybe I get it. Maybe maybe they can get a Saad. Depending on what Saad's asking for, I don't know if he's been linked to Toronto. They're still looking for top 6 help. Dallas obviously wouldn't be worse with Saad. The Islanders could obviously use him. It's interesting. I kind of like got it in my head that anytime you weren't hearing anything about a specific free agent, it meant that they were linked to the Islanders. Like, by not hearing that they were linked, maybe that meant they were. Because they were working things out, like, and it was serious. It wasn't like Landeskog and the Islanders where like there were slight little rumors, and it made a lot of sense because the Islanders all of a sudden had this cap room. The Islanders were not an option for Landeskog at all, or even Tarasenko for that matter, the trade route, until money started being moved around.
I wouldn't
2 weeks or last week, right? I was in DC. Yeah, it was last week. This was a completely different conversation leading into the expansion draft.
I wouldn't exactly say the Islanders weren't an option for Landeskog. I think that, he at one point, this game of chicken got further than either side believed it would.
Yeah, but there was like a lot of stuff had to happen before the Islanders can be taken seriously, even by Landeskog's camp.
Absolutely.
And that's totally what I mean. Agree. The link didn't making sense. I could see that the whole time.
Right, but at one point, like I said, this game of chicken went further than any side anticipated. So at one point, Landeskog's agent had to come to him and say, look, if this doesn't work out, where do you want to go? And he said the Islanders would be a spot that he wants to go.
Yeah, so that's also true.
So, it's nice that the Islanders are part of the big name equation. A couple of years ago, it was Panarin. This year, it's Landeskog. Tough that it didn't work out because, he stayed where he was. Great for him. Still plenty of options available. Probably need to do that via the trade route. I don't know if that's what's going to happen. Things got quiet on the Tarasenko front, but let's talk about the trade front for a little bit. Is there a trade route in your mind? I think you know what I'm going to say, but in your mind, is there a trade route possible at this point, or is there a best option at this point?
It would lead to a bunch of other moves. Lou would have to have a defender on the hook to sign for him to be comfortable making the move up front.
Okay.
So if you're gonna sign or make another trade or whatever, well, I guess there's a couple options here, right? I think we're both thinking that that Beauvillier is the chip. I don't like that idea.
Me neither.
I don't want that to be the thing. You don't yell at us, Twitter. I don't know that I don't want that to be what the Islanders do, because I like him a lot. I think he's a huge asset. He's Barzal's best friend.
Yeah,
I think that's a blow to the locker room. I don't know what the other options are at that point. Like, I think he's one of the only ones left. But if it's Beauvillier, he's either going to be traded for and open up a spot for a Tarasenko, or be traded for a defender.
I think we're on the same wavelength here because, and I don't think I put this out there earlier, but I can't help but wonder that if the Islanders do land Tarasenko, how much it'll actually cost, right? The price seems to get lower with every day that passes. As long as this drags on, I feel like the price is just going to get lower. They signed Buchnevich. They don't bring back Hoffman. They lose Schwartz, but they have some money issues of their own over in St. Louis. And again, let's not forget Tarasenko asks to be traded. I don't know if that's gonna transpire into him putting a Blues jersey back on, despite what Doug Armstrong said. So,
and yeah, I keep forgetting about that too. Is that he's looking to go.
Right. He wants out. And I think both sides have agreed that a divorce is just best for each of them.
And I think that ties the Blues' hands a little bit. And it might continue to drive that price down. So maybe it doesn't cost Beauvillier in that particular sense. But if you bring on a Tarasenko,
well, that's the thing, right?
So, and then Beauvillier, here's the thing. It's a sign and trade for the Islanders where they're going to sign Beauvillier to the deal and then trade him. Because his rights aren't enough, I don't think. Or I don't exactly know what that temperature is for other GMs where he can refuse to sign and then you gave up an asset. So I think in that case, you're going to hear Beauvillier get signed. Oh, he got qualified, right?
Yeah, he did.
So he's going to sign the deal and then get traded. And he might need to have that. Lou might need to have that deal in place to say, this is the number you're interested in having him at. The Islanders sign him to the deal and trade him, whether that's for Tarasenko or to Seattle for Vince Dunn. I don't know if that's a 1-for-1. I don't know what that looks like for Tarasenko. Okay, I don't know if that's Beauvillier plus whatever.
Here are my thoughts, right? So I was saying I don't know however long this drags out. I don't know, but I feel like it dwindles the price of Tarasenko. I don't know how much it's actually going to cost at this point. It might only cost you a third-round pick and a prospect, and if that it might not. It's not going to be an A-level prospect.
The prices for things are all over the place. I don't understand what is happening.
It's very hard to predict, but I feel like Tarasenko's price is not that much. Now, let's just say we give the Blues a B-chip prospect, even somebody like Otto Koivula, and a pick. I do that every day. I'll take Tarasenko. I'll take the chance that he's possibly not healthy, but I'm pretty sure at this point, with his surgeon coming into the equation and saying, look, he's healthy, I'm pretty confident in that. Now, you get Tarasenko. The odd man out, unfortunately, is going to be Anthony Beauvillier. And like John said earlier, that's not something him and I are advocating for. It's not something that we think would be great for morale around the locker room. Again, Barzal's best friend, and that worries me for Barzal's future. But either way, there's no denying Tarasenko would be the best winger that Matt Barzal's ever played with. So, now Beauvillier is the odd man out, and you flip a Anthony Beauvillier for Vince Dunn, right? You flip Anthony Beauvillier for Vince Dunn, just their rights. Now each team has the right to negotiate with each RFA. They're both RFAs. They're both age 24. They both might fill a need. It seems like Seattle's building for the future. You get a young guy in Anthony Beauvillier who's going into his age 25 season.
Who's played with Eberle.
It's not the worst idea to fill a need with Vince Dunn, you're essentially getting the same value in your forward group on your blue line, right? Now you have Tarasenko. You have Bailey moves over to the left wing. Wahlstrom moves up next to Brock Nelson on the right wing. You have Parise, JGP, Palmieri, and your first line's Lee, Barzal, and Tarasenko. It's a pretty good top nine.
I don't know that anyone at this point or ever, I don't know that anyone's arguing that this would be a good move and this would be a good addition. And, no one's arguing Tarasenko in the lineup doesn't look good going into the season. I think it's just how people are confused and rightfully so, and how you get there.
Yeah. No, I agree.
long term, what is that? Bavillier was seen for a long time as a young core piece. You get a lot older with Tarasenko.
Yeah.
That window closes a little bit more. It's not all of a sudden Barzal, Bavillier, and a couple of young guys, and Wallstrom and Noah Dobson anymore, and maybe some of the top 3 defenders.
What's the difference between signing Gabriel Landeskog, who's going to his age 29 season, and
no, it's 6 1/2 dozen. It's the same thing.
Right.
I don't. My thing is like when you do that, and you have to give up assets either after you sign Landeskog because there's not room in the lineup. What we believe to be true, or rather, what does Elliot Friedman always say? I'm not telling you the truth. I'm telling you what I heard. So what we're hearing is that Parise and Palmieri are coming back.
Yes.
If that is true, and they did sign a Landeskog, which obviously can't happen, but if they did, someone's going out anyway. Like that's a given, and it's.
But you said that the team gets older and that window closes. But if the asset going out gets you an asset coming in of the same age, it's lateral, and you're filling
the forward group gets. It makes the Islanders have a really nice top 5 defenders.
Right.
I think that's okay. So that group winds up being a little more solidified to maybe what it was 2 or 3 years ago with Boychuk and Leddy and all that, and Pulak, Pellick, Mayfield. That all of that was very good together. It's the forward group then that the tide changes very quickly, and that's where you. I mean, if you're getting a Tarasenko and you're making moves like that, you're absolutely in win now mode.
Right, and that's
I was
what
thinking.
I'm saying.
I was thinking about this today. And I guess I'll ask you first. Like, the Islanders win the cup next season. How long before it wears off? Like the win, like going through all that, the emotion. My team is the best. All that. Like, how long does that last for you? How many seasons?
Let's just say, for argument's sake, that you trade Bavillier to the Kraken, and you get a Vince Dunn in exchange, and you get Tarasenko from the Blues. You win the cup. I think Bavillier could have 5 straight 30-goal seasons, and I would say whatever.
What I mean is, like, if the Islanders win a cup, and then the next year they're absolute garbage, and the year after that they're just clawing into the playoffs and losing the first. Like, how many seasons before you're like the Chicago Blackhawks? Like, we're sick of this team. Like, they got to make some moves. They got to get better, even though they just essentially won 3 cups the last decade.
Yeah.
How long does that last? For me, it was like after 3 seasons of them like being mediocre, if they miss the playoffs or they lose in the first round, they get swept or something like that. After 3 years, I start to go, okay, we got to get better again. And then you start losing players. Like, then all of a sudden, Barzal's that much older. 3 or 4 years from now, he becomes Landeskog at that point, and he wants to get traded or doesn't want to I want them to be perennial contenders. I don't know that, in 3 years from now, they're not still with this group one way or another. A lot of them are locked up that long. They don't really have a choice. But that's what worries me, is that they can be good and maybe they can win a cup, but everyone better be just like savor that forever. I ask a lot of Ranger fans, they say that, their sign said that they could finally die happy and all that kind of stuff in 94. I think they're ready to win another cup now. I think if you ask a lot of Ranger fans, even if they were alive for 94 and remember it vividly, they go, yeah, it's time. So you don't want to be in that position.
This is why asset management is so important.
They don't have a lot, and that's my problem. Ultimately, there's no replacement.
Right.
They just let Dal Cole go. Ho-Sang is on a PTO with Toronto, which will haunt Islander fans absolutely forever. If he winds up signing, that's my problem. There are no assets. I mean, you get this kid. We'll talk about the draft in a little bit if we have time. But you give up Bavillier for short term. They better win a fucking cup. That's why, like, they don't really have a lot of options. Now, you look at Pittsburgh too, right? Like, they went through the same thing and they burned through a lot of stuff, and they didn't have any assets, and anything they did, they traded for now, and they They won the cups, but then that was at a certain point. That was it.
But you have to remember too, like, you know, if they trade Anthony Beauvillier, it's only going to be in a hockey trade, and Beauvillier for a Vince Dunn swap is essentially, you're, again, like I said before, you have the same value that you had in Beauvillier, just now in Vince Dunn. Same age, same value at their respective position.
I'm on board with that. I think if it opens up a spot for Tarasenko, and then you're just chasing, I don't know what his contract looks like, but depending on how long he's around with the team, he's replaceable. Like, there aren't a million Tarasenkos out there, but you can get another person to play on the top line. Or you get another prospect, you move Wallstrom up there, you move Palmieri up there, whatever the deal is, depending on how long his deal winds up being, is not impossible. I guess I just get a little nervous. And this is like before the Islanders even win anything. I'm like thinking about it, but you say asset management, and that is what triggers me. Like, what assets? They finally have a first round pick next year.
Yeah.
They got lucky with somebody that fell into the second round with the 52nd pick that looks like he's going to be really good. So that's it right now. Like, the guys who were prospects 2 years ago are in the show. Yeah. Dobson and Wallstrom in the show. You don't have Hosang anymore. You don't have Dal Cole. You don't have Niederreiter. What you do have in prospects, isn't exactly that hot. You're not excited about Koivula. Bellows is around. He's obviously not your favorite guy. I guess there's a couple others, but they're not exactly sniffing the NHL lineup anytime soon. We used to see them near the end of the season because the Islanders were bad and they would just play these kids because they didn't have anybody left. We don't see that anymore because we have the roster that's in front of us and they're winning. They're winning rounds, so they're getting warmed up. So this is very different. But I think there's going to be even another uncomfortable moment coming up, if not by the time you're listening to this.
An uncomfortable moment?
Well, like a Beauvillier going. An unfortunate, uncomfortable, like, I think it'd get better, but you have to get over that hump of Beauvillier not being there. It's okay.
Let me just be clear.
You can be upset that Beauvillier left at the same time of being happy of whatever the return is. Two things can be true.
Let me just be clear. I don't want Beauvillier on the move. I also don't think he's going to be on the move. I don't think that the move for Lou Lamoriello, after losing out on Devon Toews last season, stating this season he has every intention to retain all of his RFAs, is to then later trade Anthony Beauvillier, who's a pretty important part of the top six of this group. I don't think it's going to happen. However, he's the odd man out if anything were to happen. The only way it would happen is if you're getting a surefire upgrade in your top six, and he has to go the other way. The other
that's what I mean. I think even if that trade for Dunn is there, right? Lou and Ron Francis in Seattle decide they're going to do this. I think he also has to know he's bringing in somebody in the top six. I don't think one thing happens without the other. So we see them either concurrently or consecutively, so that everything's solidified. You can't just have one without the other and then hope. Knowing Lamoriello, he's going to figure it out first before he makes any moves and pulls the trigger.
The other thing I wonder too is, we keep talking about, Tarasenko. The Flames have something to work out with Johnny Gaudreau, and if they don't, his name has also been in the mix of, are we going to move him? So they either need to extend him because he's almost done with his contract, or they need to move him. And that's been another name that's been linked to the Islanders for however many seasons it's been, because the Flames, have to decide which way they're going to go with their organization right now. So, if it's for Johnny Gaudreau, maybe and he's younger than Tarasenko. I think he's going into his age 26, maybe 27 season. So, that hurts a little bit less, and you're getting an upgrade. Johnny Gaudreau is a sure upgrade over Anthony Beauvillier. So, we'll see what happens here. You rightfully brought up here as well. As we saw in 2014 when Snow traded for Leddy and Boychuk, things can obviously change. So between now and the start of the season, the Islanders might look a lot different. This is only day one. As you're listening to this, it'll be day 2 of free agency. So,
or 3 or 4, depending on
when you're
Within-
listening.
within a week of free agency opening.
Right.
Well, today felt like a day.
Today felt like a week. But, the other thing that's important to remember, too, is that the priority here was to keep our own. And I say our as if I'm part of the organization. Lou Lamoriello's priority was to keep his own. He wanted to make sure his RFAs came back. He wanted to make sure Casey Cizikas came back. And he's got to hammer out the details. He also has the connection with Parise, and that's the obvious reason why Parise came in, why he visited Long Island, why he's likely to be in the top 9 of this forward group. But that's it. And again, that doesn't mean that he's not going to make another move later, but his first priority was to take care of his own, and that's what he's doing.
I wonder too if the forward group is just what it is. What we're looking at with Palmieri in the first line, like how we started the show and described it, if that's not what it is, and Lou is trying to make a move for a defender without taking anything away somehow. So a prospect and a pick or something for Dunn, or something else that we're not thinking of, another trade to get somebody with a little bit of term. I wonder if that's not the route that he's trying to go. So maybe to your point, where Beauvillier is not moved and they are keeping the roster together, maybe one of those the big fish we're thinking is maybe not a forward.
Could be, right?
This group, Lee might be the big fish, and it might be an internal big fish, but it's still getting him back in the roster.
And you have to realize too, we talk about analytics, we talk about raw stats, we talk about eye test, but none of us are having the same conversation. The coaches are having, management's having, all of that. So they might see a Palmieri return as playing with Anders Lee as an upgrade over Eberle playing with Lee. They might see Parise swapping in for Leo Komarov and playing with Peugeot and Wahlstrom as an upgrade over making a trade for somebody else. So,
well, somebody was saying that there was comparisons going around, like Lee, Palmieri, and Parise is an upgrade over Komarov, Eberle, and Zajac.
And that's an excellent point. An excellent point.
So essentially replacing those 3 players, even though Palmieri was on the roster last year, for at least the end of the year and into the playoff run, that's an upgrade.
Absolutely.
So I think on its own, we may just need to. I mean, the fourth line staying intact, a year more experienced Wahlstrom, who I think had very close to the same amount of goals as Eberle in a lot less games during the regular season.
You could be onto something there. I don't know off the top of my head.
So
it doesn't sound wrong.
So I think the team's already better. I hate to I mean, and that I think is okay. I mean, we may, we're free agent show. We were worried we didn't have a whole lot to say tonight, and it might be because it happened already, and it wasn't what everyone was expecting it to be, and it may still not be, because it may be that a defenseman big splash or out of left field that I honestly can't think of off the top of my head, and it's because there's probably a lot of options out there.
I think that a lot of people are overlooking and underestimating the fact that Oliver Wahlstrom will be a surefire everyday player next season. Plenty of people have said to me, "Oh, Barry's not going to play him." Listen, take what you saw in the playoffs with Oliver Wahlstrom and throw it out the window. That's done. Okay, he's proved that he's part of this forward group now, and moving forward, he's going to be utilized. The power play is going to probably revolve around him. I wouldn't be surprised if he's playing top 6 minutes after 20 games. All right, he will be in the game in the lineup every game, barring injury. And I'm going to laugh. I'm going to laugh hysterically when he possibly scores 30 goals, 35 goals. He could end up playing next to Matt Barzal for 60 games, and he could end up getting 35 goals next to Matt Barzal, because Matt Barzal knows how to create room, he knows how to dish, and Oliver Wahlstrom knows how to score. And if they
I'd
put
love
him
for
on,
Barzell to be more selfish, but I hear you.
and if they put him on the power play with Matt Barzell, it's just look. He's not Alex Ovechkin, but it's the same idea.
I'll say this about the goal scoring. So Eberle had 16 goals in 55 games. Wallstrom had 12 goals in 44 games.
Right. Prorate that
Um,
over an 82 game season, you're looking at a 30 goal pace.
it's definitely close. I'll also say this: Lee had 12 goals in 27 games.
Yeah.
He was on fire.
Yeah.
So,
He
like,
was
thinking
looking
about
at 35 goals at least. I think he was on a 39 goal pace if my math is correct.
think about what that addition does for the Islanders.
I don't think
And
they lose by one.
So
Yeah.
like my Wallstrom Eberle comparison's a little off, but 4 goals in 10 game difference. Wallstrom takes a step. Eberle's not going to get better after 30. He's not just going to fall off the map. We'll see what happens in Seattle, but that's close. 4 goals in a 10 game spread isn't very far, and Wallstrom's going to get a lot better.
It's actually funny that you just said that you're not going to get better after 30. And this is going to be a quick side note. I don't want to do a deep dive in on this or anything, but I was listening to Elliot and I was listening to Marek, and they were talking about the same thing. Can you not get better after 30? Is that a thing?
I think you can. I think it's a narrative, and I probably played into it a little bit, but at the same time, stats are saying it's harder and less likely for you to get better after, you take out the Ovechkins and some of these guys that are just absolute monsters after 35 that skew those charts a little bit. And no, and I think we saw, Eberle was consistently inconsistent. Same probably goes for Eberle. The last 2 seasons, 58 games, 16 goals, 55 games, 16 goals. That's, the 1920 and then 2021 season, respectively. The season before he had 19, but then he fell off because 17-18 he had 25. So it's clear he's going down. Now we're playing less games. Maybe is 20, 30 games worth 10 goals for Eberle? Who knows? He's streaky as hell.
You might be right.
It's impossible. It's without having him finish the time with the Islanders, it's going to be impossible because Seattle's a different team. He's definitely capable of it, but Wallstrom is going to have a better upside at this point, being that close to Eberle. Maybe that's my point. Being that close to Eberle already, and a 10-year difference between them, Wallstrom is going to get better at even if it's the same rate as Eberle getting worse.
Right.
And that's better.
Right.
He's gonna eclipse them quick in 2 seasons.
I guess the main point, the main takeaway here is everybody's so worried about upgrading and getting better, and I get that. It's only obvious to the average hockey fan if they get better by a trade or a big free agent signing, and that might not necessarily be true. Again, Beauvillier is still young. He could take a step forward. Barzell is still young. He could take a step forward. Oliver Wahlstrom could take a step forward. Noah Dobson could take a step forward. Ilya Sorokin can continue to grow. There's plenty to be excited about with the Islanders. Brock Nelson could score 30 goals. I understand the panic because you saw so many names fly off the board today. But there's no reason to think that they're going to go into next season and think that's it. Call fire sale. Might as well just start the rebuild now. I've seen that before in the past couple of days. Everybody needs to calm down. Everything will work itself out. Again, take into consideration some of those younger guys who could take a step forward and just make this team that much better next season. Namely Oliver Wahlstrom and Noah Dobson. I think they're going to play huge roles next season. So don't worry about the, I guess, lack of information and news.
I think we know what we know. I think we know, other than the trade that may or may not happen, or frankly needs to happen on D. I think we know what we know for the forward group.
Correct.
At this point, my honest opinion, and we'll know maybe soon, is that the Islanders are not going to make that big forward trade. I don't know that I'm so worried about Tarasenko coming or Saad or something like that being signed Saad or trade with Tarasenko. I don't know if that's necessarily what I'd be looking for. Too much roster shuffling.
Yeah.
They're essentially adding three pieces full time with the team, and not having to rely on Komarov as much. And
Let's move on.
Jack and all that.
Let's move on from the free agent frenzy, because there's probably going to be more about free agent talk next episode, episode 70 next week. We'll talk about more of that then. Let's talk about the New York Islanders, new players that came through the rookie draft. And you asked if there were any standout picks. Now, I know you're not top notch on the prospects. That's a little more my speed. So I'll just do a quick run through of this. And I got to say, this was, by far not the most controversial draft pick of the draft because of who the Montreal Canadiens drafted. But controversial in skill, Aatu Räty. All right. The Islanders get Aatu Räty at 52nd overall in the second round. And say what you want about his demise, but he's showing quite the turnaround. He was once thought of as the top talent in the draft, and a couple of years in the COVID times where he had some downplay doesn't scream bust to me. He scored 4 goals the day he was drafted. He had another goal and assist today at the World Junior Showcase, and he's off to a good post-draft start. This could be the steal of the draft, in my opinion. He maybe just needed some confidence, and that was something I wrote about in one of my articles. He said that, or his agent said that, the media maybe got to him a little bit. He was projected to be number 1 overall at just 15 years old in this draft. So the kid has skill, right? Every coach that has coached him says all the tools are there. His only drawback might be his skating, and even that's taken strides in the past year. So maybe you just need a little bit of confidence. He finally got drafted, and now he's showing what he's got. And he's doing pretty well at the World Junior Showcase. So I believe he has 1 year left to play over in Finland if he doesn't make the Islanders out of camp, which I highly doubt. And then he can come over to the AHL and he'll get ready. But it's going to take 2 to 3 years. But Aatu Räty's outlook, he could be a number 2 center in this league. He could be a number 3 center in this league. So we'll see where it goes. But I think that you have a lot to be excited about with him. Goaltender Tristan Lennox, he's a good get in the 3rd round. Poised, confident goaltender. He's difficult to rattle is part of his profile. He was the 3rd best goaltender in this draft. And, Mitch Korn and Pierre Greco could put the finishing touches on what could be a good starting goaltender in the NHL. Cameron Berg is a big winger. He's committed to the University of Nebraska, Division I in the NCAA, and he could become a good bottom 6 winger. Eetu Liukas, he draws Val Nichushkin comparisons, and that's pretty good for a bottom 6. And Alexei Malinin, he intrigues me because he was on draft boards in the 2nd round to the 7th round. So he's a little bit of a gamble, but he could be a decent puck-moving defenseman one day. We'll see what happens. But, not a bad draft for the Islanders not having a first-round pick. They essentially got a first-round talent, a possible top 10 talent, a possible top 5 talent. Aatu Räty is somebody to be excited about, as is Tristan Lennox, in my opinion. We'll see what we get out of the rest, but I don't think that they did too bad. A good friend of ours, he used to write with the Hockey Writers. He's now a scout with FC Hockey, Josh Bell, says, the same thing as I do. He actually fed me this information. He said there's a lot to be excited about with these two, especially Räty. Getting him at 52nd overall could prove to be the biggest steal of the draft. So let's move on. We got some questions on Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll get them over to you as we go here. So I think one of the big questions is, will the Islanders ever sign anybody? I think I think they will. Or they'll trade somebody. They've already made the roster great. As we said, Palmieri and Brise on the roster is an upgrade. Leaves back. I think it's fine. They'll figure it out. The question from Dave Pettit was, will the Islanders ever sign anyone? Discuss. So I think we've done that. Are people freaking out for no reason? Serious question from Shamey Ames. What do you think about that?
Yes.
They're freaking out for no reason.
Welcome to Islanders Twitter.
I mean,
Next.
I think it's I think what's scary for Islander fans is that we're just so close as fans, and the Islanders were so close to getting to the final 2 years in a row, and you clearly see something special happening. You're like,
yeah, I agree.
It used to be, I think, a little bit crazy because it was like, just get better, like do literally anything, and now it's like actual chatter about something that can push them over to the edge to win. And this might be worse. This kind of like anxious feeling might even be worse than like, we're just bad for so long.
When are we going to be good?
Instead of now it's like, we're like a player and a half away to really like making it. Like, I think that's even like more anxiety inducing than it wasn't in the past. Dave Seppersons asks, and we kind of discussed this a little bit, would you trade Beauvillier for Dunn if you have another deal agreed to of Bellows and a second for Tarasenko?
Yeah, I do that all day. And again, I don't want Beauvillier gone, but that seems like you're filling holes there. You're filling needs. You need the defenseman. You get the sniper. Bellows has probably seen his last day in the NHL, in my opinion. I don't think he's going to get another shot with the Islanders. I think there's too many guys ahead of him at this point.
Well, there's guys that are old, that are experienced, that aren't going anywhere.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
John Filippelli asks, if the Islanders re-sign their free agents, the RFAs, and sign Parise, are the Islanders a better team than they were last season? I think we also answered that.
We did, and I think yes.
And I think so too.
Because of the pure fact, like you said, Lee, Parise, Palmieri is better than Eberle, Zajac, and Komarov. So there's your upgrade. Another year of Oliver Wahlstrom. He takes a step forward. Yes, absolutely yes. They're better than last year.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Long-time listener and follower on Twitter, Joshua Hill. Actually, a good question. Actually, all these are pretty good questions. We just answered them previously. Joshua Hill asks, what would your top power play look like, assuming we have Palmieri and Parise in the lineup?
Very good question. Yeah, I probably have Wahlstrom on the first unit. I think you have to get him up there with Barzal. And you plant Anders Lee right in front of the goaltender. I liked what I saw from Dobson as the power play QB. Nick Leddy's
They don't have any option. Yeah, Taves is gone. Leddy's gone. You don't have
maybe Pollock, but he can't hit the net. So I think Dobson's the guy.
He's got to figure that out.
And that fifth piece could rotate between. If it's not working out, it could be Bailey. It could be Nelson. It could be Beauvillier. Just depends. Who's going to win that spot. So my first unit will probably look like Lee, Barzal, Wahlstrom, Dobson, and I'm going to say Bailey.
Bailey's been on that second unit. My issue with a lot of the lines is that there are a lot of righties, even like swapping Eberle and Palmieri, and then you add Wahlstrom and Barzal. There were a lot of righties in the lineup, and that made it really hard. Barzal was on that off wing, and he would just miss the net wide right, and it would just rim around. You need Barzal on the off wing, on the left wing there, or Wahlstrom be there. You almost need to split them up a little bit. Throw Parise there, or a lefty if Beauvillier's in the lineup, or you have Lee in front of the net. You need to split things up a little bit because you can't move the puck around. So I'm thinking defender is just handcuffing one of the two of them.
I'm thinking they need to go 1-3-1. Defender at the point, which would be Dobson. Have the three forwards in basically the middle of the ice, one on each dot, and Anders Lee in front of the net, and Barzal feeding from behind the net. I think that might be the way it has to go.
I saw it's interesting. I'm trying to think back to I believe it was in the playoffs. Barzal came from the right circle, like just the not quite the top of the circle, but not quite the hash marks, like right in this in between area. And
Yeah.
he sniped.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe that's where he needs to be kind of circling from if he's going to be on that off wing. He needs to be able to kind of he needs to create his own space there and get lost a little bit, kind of circle maybe outside of the zone and come back in and collect a pass from somebody.
I'm sorry. Timeout. Just because I read it before I forget it. Super interesting. Little anecdote. The only two teams not to make a move today are the St. Louis Blues and New York Islanders.
Yeah, I'm just seeing that pop up on cap friendly depth charts. Everybody's favorite follow on days like this, nailing everything. I don't know how they do it, but yes, the only two. Colorado's made one move. Vancouver's 15 moves.
Yeah.
Where are the Kraken in this? Like Seattle's 3? How are they only? That's incredible. But yes, Islanders. The goose egg on the board. Last question, Thomas Hahn. How have you spent the last 7.5 hours? That was a pretty good. I thought that was a pretty good question.
I'll run you through my day, Tom. I woke up, went to the gym. Then I made some breakfast, and right before all of the craziness started, I was editing some articles for some writers under me who submitted some work. Then the craziness started, and I was, checking my emails, checking my DMs, writing some of my own stuff, and really just waiting. I just waited around. I was watching the TSN broadcast, and just waiting for any information to pop through. I got everything I needed to do out of the way early, nice and early. I wake up early. I'm up at like 7, 8 o'clock. Make sure everything's done for the day so I can attend to you crazy fans. That's my day.
Yeah, I worked today during all of this. I had Twitter up. I was just on TweetDeck anyway, and looking at the Islanders hashtag and seeing if anything popped up. I knew Jay and other member Joe was scanning everything as best they could, driving or whatever the case. He's in Massachusetts or something. So I knew I'd get my updates one way or another. But yeah, I just keeping an eye out with everybody else. I think we were all. I didn't hear anything more than probably what you heard and maybe what James was telling me yesterday, but it's not a whole lot. I'll just to kind of circle back on the free agent situation. Haber metrics on Twitter. Carey, I don't know, depending on who he's a good follow. He does a lot of analytics and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
He had a kind of a stream of consciousness on Twitter a little while ago. That's just popping up into my feed. He said, if I were to predict what's going on, the finalization of contracts is dependent on a Tarasenko deal, AAVs to Cizikas, Palmieri, Parise dependent on trade details. Does the deal go the other way? St. Louis retaining money. Saad signs with St. Louis contingent on the trade. Like, there's a lot of things that could be waiting on other dominoes to fall. And when there's that much kind of quiet, you can't do anything.
Right.
No one knows who's chicken or the egg at this point. They don't know which one they are and which shoe is gonna drop any of that. Any metaphor. Come up with your own metaphor for that. And Carey also mentions it could be wildly wrong, and it just but it helps explain maybe why things are so quiet.
Right.
So I think that's important. I think we kind of said that earlier, but I think that's kind of the thought process here. A lot of people are just saying no news coming from the Islanders is kind of good. I know it's hard for fans. It's hard in most situations, but it's particularly hard here. So I'm not sure that you're going to know anything maybe by the time you're listening to this. We may still be in the same boat, but hopefully that explains it a little bit.
That was our day. Thanks for
that. That was our day. I do want to get through. I know we're running a little long here, but I would like to get to around the NHL if you think that's all right.
Yeah, let's get to Around the Rink now, John. Remember, we
Around the Rink,
rebranded
we changed
Around
it.
the Rink. Brought to you by nobody right now, but we might have some news regarding that in the next couple days. We'll keep you posted. But let's start with some good news. Luke Prokop, the first openly gay player of the Nashville Predators. He's a prospect in the Nashville organization. First one to be openly gay in the NHL, and that's a big step for the league. These are your words, John. A big step for the league, even if everything was a little coordinated.
There was
I
a
absolutely agree, though.
there was a donation made. It was very coordinated. I think it was good.
It was it was really good. I think good on Luke.
I mean, there's a lot of like back and forth news today that I think, or within the last week or so, because I missed last week. So, and I'm usually the one that brings up this kind of stuff because soapbox. But I think this is a good thing. Maybe despite some of the bad stuff that's going on right now, this is a bright spot. The league definitely milked it, and it was obvious. Some of it feels kind of performative. I know they made a donation, like I said, or to some organization. I believe Elliot Friedman had mentioned that at some point on one of the shows over the last couple of weeks. I guess either way, it's good. You want to believe hockey is for everyone, and this is a step in the right direction for sure. So yeah, definitely a good thing, even if it's just on the surface. Enjoy a small victory.
Absolutely. Then there was the controversy of the Montreal Canadiens pick, Logan Mailloux. And I don't know. What do you want to say about that? I'll say this. It was not the move. Obviously, it was the wrong choice. Then there was the press conference where they asked, what was the thought process here? And the 35 to 40 seconds of silence was quite deafening. How hard? Listen, you already made the wrong choice. I want to be abundantly clear. You already made the wrong choice. He renounced himself from the draft. Apparently, legally, you can't actually do that.
Not like other sports, no.
Right.
Where you can do that.
So moving forward, maybe that needs to be a thing. But how hard would it have been to say, and hopefully, you would think that eventually down the line, this is actually true for them too. But how hard for them would it have been to say, we drafted somebody who we saw has a gift and a talent in the game of hockey, but B, needs direction. And we feel as an organization, we can provide direction, mentorship, groom this person to become a better person. How hard would that have been to say?
I mean, I think there's a few things even before that they need to say, and you're not wrong.
Well, yes,
I think, did you hear now? I think say something. Did you hear the pause in that thing? That was the most awkward thing I've
35 to 40 seconds. He did not know what to say.
And they had the entire second day that they didn't address anybody, I believe, until the end of the second day, which was 7 hours on Saturday. So to not have anything to say at that point, and then to say what he did is unbelievable. Cannot put wrap my head around that. No mention of, the first thing that they should do and the league should do is, what can they do to help the victim in all of this?
That's what I was going to say.
That should be really the first thing that's said. And then, yes, we're going to, we want to show you the receipts. Like you can say whatever you want that he's young and this thing, kids make mistakes and all this stuff. I'll say something that I think is really important. Really, no matter what age young men are, women are not there for you to make mistakes with. That is not a thing. You kind of have to know that. He knew what he was doing. You could get caught and not like that. I don't know if anyone's listened to that. Well, I don't think we've brought this up on the show, the Bo Burnham Inside thing on Netflix. I happen to really like it, but in one of the songs he goes, Father, please forgive me for I did not know what I did, or that I'd lived long enough to regret it. And I think about that a lot with stuff like this, that he just got caught. Because even at the time of all this, I believe in police reports, different things, and somebody correct us if we're wrong on this, that he said this woman was trying to ruin his life.
Right.
Now that it got closer, and he knew that there'd be a spotlight on him because he was going to be a first round pick. That's when the tone changed all of a sudden.
Well, he was a first round pick.
Well, and then he turned out to be a first round pick anyway. So not only has he not provided the apology to the victim, the team didn't do it until today at some point when
I think it was at the start of free agency they put out a statement
at noon. Yeah. So Jeff Molson, whatever.
And I'll read
one of the quotes. But it's so like.
The timing was horrible.
Well, in the it's 30 minutes that their free agency started. That's bullshit. That's just saying it because you realized it's been 5 days since the pick.
Bad.
You could have renounced it if you didn't know that what was going to happen. What you should have been doing today was renounce the pick. We saw the Coyotes do that. You should have just renounced the pick. But Jeff Molson's quote was, "We have asked Logan not to participate in a rookie or main training camp this fall. He probably wouldn't have made the main roster anyway. Being a player in the NHL is a privilege." He said he's pretty much copying what the player said. "Not a right that is granted. As the year progresses, we will reassess Logan's readiness to be part of our organization." I think there's a lot more to it, and I saw that tweet, and then I saw a link to the thing, and I just didn't care enough because it was probably going to be bullshit anyway. Not a good look for that organization.
No, really
not
bad.
a good look at all. And I think on top of that they were linked to D'Angelo, who was signed in Carolina.
Yeah,
that was going to be so much worse for that organization. They were never going to be able to recover. But then Carolina, who tweeted not long ago that they signed up for the pledge with Black Girl Hockey, and then signed this guy. It signed D'Angelo, and then on top of all of that, they bring in Ethan Bear, who, if you don't know anything about Edmonton and all of that, I believe is First Nations, Native American, and they did a quite a really cool thing with his last name and on his jersey and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And to do this, these teams like don't care. All of this until you actually see something that isn't a tweet or a black square or anything. They just don't care. It could not be clearer.
I think the NHL is drunk. What is going on?
Well, there's like a common decency thing here.
Yeah.
The thing with the Blackhawks is still ongoing.
Yeah.
And not getting better.
Yeah.
The implications kind of run really deep with all that, where any player or coach that was involved or anything like that, like I don't know where these teams' heads are at. And then Chicago, with the 32nd pick, Chicago to make some kind of mockery of all of this, seemingly on purpose. And I believe they had announced it days prior to the draft.
Oh, right.
They bring out 8 women along with, I believe, is Stan Bowman, who did not need to be the person, or whoever, somebody very high up in the organization who absolutely did not need to be that person and should be locked away forever at this point and not to be heard from again. In NHL circles, to try to like make that go away and really
bad.
There's so much here, and players, if they really want to make a stand and like not go sign in Montreal, Mike Hoffman, don't sign in. Don't, if you're a free agent, not going, Frederick Anderson, don't go sign in Carolina. And until stuff like that actually starts happening, and they say, there were certain teams, or even name the teams where they made certain decisions that I just didn't agree with on a human level. Forget about anything else. I did not want to be part of an organization like that. Nothing's going to change. And I hate to be like a super downer on like a day that really should, like, we were excited about, and the team really the Islanders got better, and we love hockey. And we had this conversation, I don't know if you remember, with Chris from Anti-Flag last year.
Anti-Flag, yeah.
And one of the things I asked him was, and I think about this a lot, wanting to live an inclusive life and really kind of like be human. I work for nonprofits. I like to help people, all this kind of stuff, and being a fan of a sport that like actively chooses to not be inclusive.
After they try, they're actively not being inclusive after trying to show that they are.
And that's why it's performative. Because if they really did,
what's happening?
They wouldn't have allowed, they would have made up a rule. They have the ability on the spot to be like, he renounced himself from the draft, Logan Mailloux, and that's it. He's gone.
Yeah.
Not allowing, it's like the NFL with, Colin Kaepernick, all that kind of, that same stuff where all of a sudden, all the stuff's changing. Is like, well, he still doesn't have, this guy doesn't have a job. You're all doing it now. You're all in it now. But you have this guy that's like, JT Brown in the NHL, right? I just don't understand what the thought process is, or if maybe there's just not one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Their PR department's being like, yeah, we should really change our logo to a rainbow, and they're like, cool, whatever. And then someone's like, yeah, you should really, this guy just came out as gay. You should probably make a donation. Yeah, okay. They're just like not paying attention.
Yeah.
They have a pool of money or this thing or that thing, and they say, yeah, sure. And, it'll make people shut up for a little bit, and they do it. There's just no way.
Not a great look.
No, it's
not a great look.
It's terrible. And it casts a bad look on everything.
And I don't know what they do to fix it. I don't know if anybody knows right now what they do to fix it, but it's safe to say something does need to get fixed in that realm of, the NHL. There's just like a ton of, there's just one, like, I don't know, circle, I guess, if you will, of NHL news right now that is just pushed off to the side, and it's just kind of like, these things are happening and they're bad, but let's talk about other stuff.
And that's why, like, I know people come to this show. I think we were fun for the most part.
Try to be.
And hockey is an escape, and we're all here for that, right? This is in the game. This is stuff that needs to be removed from the game. And it's truly our job to have that discussion and do it, right? So as humans, first and foremost, more than anything else, truly be accepting, truly open it up to everybody. It's something that we talk about. Isles Meetups talks about it. We love those guys. The Honors community, and it's everybody and all this stuff. And what are we really doing to make sure that it's safe, that we're that we're creating spaces for people that actually feel comfortable. And I hate to feel like I'm beating this like a dead horse a little bit, but I think it's really important.
It is. It is.
Yeah, we can kind of get back to some regular NHL news and the craziness maybe in Philly. Some trades, I believe, well before the draft last week. Voracek to Columbus, Atkinson the other way. What do you think?
Yeah, I was confused at first because I'm like, well, Philly wins. Cam Atkinson is double the player that Jacob Voracek is now. But then I thought about it a little more. Atkinson likes to have the puck, whereas Voracek is a little more quick to give it up. And maybe Patrick Laine needs a line mate like that. So maybe it's a good move for Patrick Laine's sake, who's in Columbus, and he needs to score a few more goals. Voracek just might be a better fit for Patrick Laine in Columbus. Now, Philly gets a great player who, he was kind of like Mr. Columbus over in Columbus. Always happy, always smiling. He was doing a ton of community work in Columbus, and maybe Philly needs a guy like Cam Atkinson because, the much of the demise of the Flyers last season was basically chalked up to no chemistry in the locker room, and the guys weren't playing for each other. And he probably brings that presence to, that locker room. So I guess it's a good trade for both sides, filling a need. Pure skill wise, though, Philly wins that trade every day, in my opinion. Another one that I want to bring up too, before I forget, we don't have it in our notes. Marc-Andre Fleury was traded for nothing to the Chicago Blackhawks.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
so
they got
I
a
was thinking about that, and
they got
I
a
kind of
prospect in
forgot.
return, but you know,
And he found
just
out
won
on
the Vezina.
Twitter.
He found out on Twitter.
Love that.
And that seems to be becoming a narrative with Vegas, right? Guys finding out via Twitter that they're being traded and not the organization.
Again, like, why not be nice? Why are we? All right, here's the thing. Fleury is said to be a great teammate, great for the organization. He was face of Vegas, blah, blah, blah. Cup winner, Vezina winner, all this stuff. Vegas treats this guy like garbage, not telling him that. But we're just going to sign D'Angelo to another deal after being bought out for essentially being a piece of shit with 4 teams. Why are we being nice to people that are terrible and not nice to people who are apparently amazing human beings?
Right.
Why is this a thing? Why is this again? This is like a cultural problem with the NHL. Not to jump back into that, but like I don't understand it. It's also confusing to me that Chicago all of a sudden needs a goalie and traded Robin Leonard last year or the year before.
right.
They
traded Robin Leonard to
goalie.
Vegas, and now they trade for Marc-Andre Fleury to take him from Vegas, where they just traded Robin Leonard to.
Now they get an asset.
I guess
Trading him, I don't know what they got in return for Leonard last year or whenever that was. Yeah, it was an interesting little love triangle there between the two goalies and going back to, Peter DeBoer and that knife in the back thing from Alan Walsh, I believe. Whoever Fleury's agent is, tweeting out that photo. Yeah, it's a little confusing. Chicago did get better this offseason. I don't really want them to have any kind of success. And I feel really bad for Chicago fans at this point because they're just in a terrible situation as an organization. But they did get better on the ice.
Yeah, I'm going to say on ice product, they got better. For some reason, they let Pius Suter walk. He was a pretty good story. He was in the Islanders camp 2 seasons ago, didn't make it, went back overseas, killed it over there, got a contract with Chicago, and he played pretty well. I think he had 14 goals last season in his first, year in the National Hockey League. So that's no joke. He now signs with Detroit for 2 years. Good signing for them. But he was a good young guy. I thought that could have moved forward with the Blackhawks. Now they trade the Blackhawks trade Brent Seabrook's rights to who else but the Tampa Bay Lightning to clear cap space because he goes to LTIR for Tyler Johnson. So now down the middle, they're looking like Kirby Dach, Jonathan Toews, Tyler Johnson. Suddenly they're not that bad with Caleb and Seth Jones on the blue line. Seth Jones also extended for 8 years. And now they have the Vezina winning trophy in net. So suddenly the Blackhawks aren't terrible. The other end of this deal is the result of getting Brent Seabrook's contract is once again another player on LTIR for the Lightning, and who signs hours later? Braden Point, 8 years, $9.5 million. I don't understand. Listen, Lou Lamoriello's been GM of the year the past 2 seasons. I don't understand how it's not Brisebois. Am I saying that right? Brisebois?
Something like that.
Something like that, right?
I
don't understand how it's not the GM of the Tampa Bay Lightning. He is just manipulating the salary cap. Manipulating it.
I also want to set the record straight here. People were saying the Islanders are also over the cap. Anders Lee didn't play in the playoffs.
That's not the same argument at all.
It's just not the same thing. Lee was just out. He was actually hurt all year.
Correct.
Done.
Not the same argument.
I feel like I needed to say that out loud because it was just super annoying. I just didn't understand what was going on.
Quick anecdote: David Pagnotta of the 4th period. We're going to be doing this for as long as we're recording because news might just trickle out. Pretty much more of the same, though. As I mentioned, this is a quote from him. As I mentioned on SiriusXM earlier, the expectation remains that Parise and Palmieri are closing in on deals with New York Islanders. There's also chatter over progress on the Cizikas front, and there may be a couple irons in the fire. We'll see if it all comes together. Just put it in the books. It's done.
Yeah, It's getting close. I said about Habermetrics and Carey's tweets earlier. It sounds like there's just a lot of things contingent on other things.
And in my opinion, it seems like there might be a reason why the Islanders and Blues are two of the teams who made zero moves today. The only two teams who made zero moves today.
I want to believe that. I think it's just a coincidence.
Could be just a coincidence, maybe, but where there's smoke, there's fire. So maybe there's something to it. Last thing we do before we wrap up today's show, you asked the question: any teams stand out in the Metro? Who got better?
I didn't really see a ton of moves from anyone. I think we both agreed New Jersey got better.
Yep.
Like sneaky good better.
Yep.
Where their team, their average age is well under 30.
Yes.
Well under
They're
30.
young.
They have everyone's cheap on young contracts. I think they can be sneaky good. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they can make a little bit of noise. I like Jack Hughes. He took a good step last season. Nico Hischier is a underrated forward. He's not going to blow you away, but he's very good. They signed Dougie Hamilton, the big fish, and he's an elite defenseman.
They still have a ton of cap space.
A lot of cap space. I really like that kid Yegor Sharangovich. They're going to be sneaky good, that team. I don't think that they're going to be a team to sleep on. Also, Jonathan Bernier comes in to back up not Scott Wedgwood, Mackenzie Blackwood. So I wouldn't sleep on them.
Their average age of their forward is 23.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That's crazy.
That's a pretty good group of guys to grow together.
Their oldest forward is Andreas Janssen, who's on a not great contract, but only for 2 more seasons.
And I think from maybe I saw a Wyshynski tweet, he might be the 13th forward.
It's possible. I mean, after this season, they do have some RFAs. It's like, they have a lot of cap space right now, over 20 million, still over 20 million. Well, 22 million, in fact, even with Hamilton's sign, and bringing in Bernier, who is expensive, more expensive than I thought he would be on a 2-year deal, $4 million each year. That seems excessive. If they can move Subban before they I'm sorry, they don't need to move him, or if they move him, they can retain salaries just this season.
Correct.
And his contract's finally done.
Yeah.
So that even if they they'll Miles Wood or Jesper Bratt, Pavel Zacha, any of these guys need contracts, there's more than enough room. Their D's locked up, it looks like, for the next couple seasons. They can definitely add after Subban's gone. Interesting roster. Yeah, super young.
Yeah.
Even the defenseman, like PK is 32. Everybody else is under 30. Dougie Hamilton's 28, but still the average age is 26. Mackenzie Blackwood's getting better. He's cheap for this year and next year.
Yeah, they're going to be sneaky good, and they're going to be a problem in the near future. Give it 2 to 3 years, they're going to be at the top of the division. They can definitely, and they got guys coming through. They got guys coming through the pipeline too. That kid, just going to say, Alexander Holtz. He's a sniper. That he's projected to be a good play. He's Oliver Wahlstrom-esque, I would say. I think he has a better outlook. So
yeah, they have be good. They have a lot of they have 35 out of 50 contracts and 22 million in cap space. Yeah, they're going to be good. Yeah, they can definitely continue to make some moves and even retain if they wanted to move Subban, and keep making some moves here. They can do it. Yeah, they're going to be a team they'll get better exponentially quicker than a lot of other teams as like Pittsburgh tries to figure their own stuff out, as Washington ages and tries to figure their stuff out. Philly wakes up from their drunken stupor, whenever that is, making all these crazy moves. The Devils can definitely step in here. Yeah. If it's not, Buffalo's not getting better. So the East can be kind of open with Philly, maybe Pittsburgh bowing out, or Capitals trying to figure their own stuff out. The Devils can maybe sneak into one of those spots there.
Yeah. I guess we'll see what happens. But this was just day one of free agency. Yes, there were a lot of names that came off the board, but there are still plenty of names on the board. Not that I think that they're going to sign any new free agents, probably just guys returning aside from Zach Parise. Plenty of time to work out trades. If you're going to ask me on Twitter 1,000 times if you should be worried, I'm going to continue to tell you no.
Yes.
So
be worried.
So if you're John, you're worried. If you're me, you're not. John's not really worried. But again, just day one, lots of time for things to still transpire. And, I don't think there's any reason to think that the Islanders are going to be worse next season. I think that, everything will sort itself out. Lamoriello's proven that before, and I think he'll do it again. We'll talk to you all next week. Hopefully there's a little bit more news that we can talk about official. But we want to say thank you to the Hockey Podcast Network, the Hockey Writers, and of course, all of you, our listeners. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Nasserman Hockey and find our work at the Hockey Writers. You can find me at James Nichols NYI and John at John Zella, no H. And until next time, everybody, let's go Islanders.